All right, for today's enrichment lesson, we're going to look at distance in between negative and positive numbers. So we did a little bit of this earlier this week when we were graphing coordinates that had negative points and we were going across the axis. So we were doing something that was called taking the absolute value, which will make sense in just a second here. All right, so again, this is two ways that you'll often see these types of problems with negative numbers. You'll see a thermometer and you'll see a number line. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at a starting point, and I want you guys to think of these as like little stories with actions on what's going to happen, because this is all about building your number sense today. All right, so your starting point is -7, so it's 7 below 0. All right, so you need to find that. You're counting by twos here. All right, so it's technically going to be right here. All right, so how far away is +9? All right, so I'm going up to 9. So this is what I'm doing. I'm going past 0 to 10. So that distance right there is what we're trying to calculate. And the same thing here. If we start at -7, right, and we end at 9, what is our distance? And this is where we've used that concept. Okay, so I'm going to pull this away, the absolute value. All right, so what is the absolute value of -7? All right, so we see that here, the distance from a negative number to 0, and that is its absolute value. All right, so that's what we calculate there. Okay, and now the other one you've been doing for years, right? The distance between 0 and 9 is 9. And so once you have that absolute value of your negative number, you can add the two together. So 9 plus 7 is 16. All right, so we have a distance of 16 for those two numbers. All right, let's look at another one. All right, so our starting point now is 5, and our ending point is -2. All right, so it'd be like dropping from 5 degrees down to 2 below. All right, so it's easier to see that on this number line here. So where's my starting point? My starting point is here, and my ending point is -2. All right, so when we look at our absolutes again, we're going from 5 to 0, so that's a distance of 5, and now we are going from 0 to 2. All right, and then we add the two distances together, and we have 7. All right, the other way to look at it is we find the absolute value of this number, we put it here, and then we add the two together. And that's only when you go across to the other axis. In this case, the negative side of the axis is when you're going to add an absolute value to it. And it'll make sense when you see an example where there's two on the same axis in just a minute. All right, how about this one? All right, we go from -10 to -1. All right, so here we are. There's my starting point. There's my ending point. And now I'm going from here to here. So since I'm in the same negative side of the number line, all right, I don't need to find absolute values because I'm not cutting across 0. All right, so it would be the same thing as saying I'm going to find the difference between 10 and 1. Since it's on the same side, I just subtract my 2 points, all right? And so the distance would be 9. And you could see that by doing 9 jumps. All right, the distance is not -9, it's 9 in between. All right, so it's important to know what they're asking for here. All right, so when you're on the same side of 0, then the distance from one point to the other is just subtraction. All right, and then the last type of problem you're going to see is this one. So your starting point is -8, and your ending point is +8. All right, so there's some people that see this right away, and they just add those together, and they think it's 0. Right, it's 0 distance because it doesn't make sense, right? So what's our absolute value again of our negative number? All right, we're going to put in 8 because that's the distance from here to here. All right, and then any positive number is already set up to tell you the distance from 0 to 8. It's absolute. All right, so what's the answer? You're adding these two together. So the distance between -8 and +8 is 16. All right, so you're going to be looking at problems like this now. So take a look. All right, you're going to see a starting point and an ending point. All right, so look at the instructions. For all negative numbers, write the absolute value underneath, and that's just going to help you. All right, so you'll see right away, here's -4. What is the absolute value? It's 4. All right, so now I find the distance, or add the two together, sorry. All right, so 4 to 12, and that's 16. All right, so think of that number line. It's going from 4 to 0, and now it's going from 0 to 12. All right, so that's where I'm getting my 16. Here we go. I have 3 to -8 now. All right, so for some of you guys, I suggest starting at the negative number and then thinking about it going to 0, then to the next number. All right, so what's your absolute here? All right, so your distance would be 8 to 0 plus 3 more to 3. So it's 11. All right. So for some of you guys, feel free to, again, draw that number line. Always think of 0. You don't have to put all the marks, but just think it out. All right. So I'm going from -8 to 3. All right. So I'm going 8 jumps here and then 3 more. That's 11. How about this one? Distance between 6 and -11. All right. So the strategy is find the absolute value from 11 to 0. -11 to 0 is 11 plus 6 is 17. All right, how about this one? To go from 4 to -9. All right, we have, I would say, start with the negative number. All right, so go up to 0. And that's a absolute value of 9. And then you're adding that to the value of 4, from 0 to 4. So we have 13. All right, how about this one right here? If we're going from -2 to 11, how far is that in between? All right, so if you're going to follow the strategy that says up above, find the values. So if you have 2 numbers down below, again, that means you're just going from one to the next, and you are not adding them, okay? So that's the distance between 2 negative numbers, is subtracting the difference between the two. So if you're looking at that number line, again, 0 is in the middle, and now you're going from -2 to -11. All right, it's very important for you to understand the concept of that number line because it's going to be used in a few weeks when we look at a negative fractions unit lesson for enrichment that is really tricky for some people because they don't understand that. All right, how about here? We're going from 3 to 12. All right, so not meant to be a trick question. We just want to think about the difference. All right, to go from 3 to 12, think of that number line. You're jumping 9 times. All right, there's another positive one. To go from a positive number to another positive number, to find the distance, you always subtract. And let's look at 2 more here. All right, to go from 4 to -11. All right, so I would say start at the -11 because it just makes it easier to think how we usually think from left to right when it comes to math. Right, so I'm going from -11 to 0. So that's why the strategy was to write the absolute value underneath. So that is a distance of 11. Now you're going from 0 to 4. So add 11 plus 4, we have 15. And then last one, take a look here. We're going from -9 to 9. All right, so this one you'll learn very soon by practicing this a lot. That is just going to be doubling the absolute value, right? Because it's on both sides. All right, so whatever value you have, when you have opposites, you're timesing by 2 to find the distance. And that is going to be a distance of 18. 9 from -9 to 0, and then 9 from 0 to 9. All right, so be very careful today. I know when you have an assignment like this, there's a tendency to think it's really easy and to rush, but that's when simple mistakes happen. All right, so remember, you cannot have a negative distance. A distance between 2 numbers is always positive, and you have to know which direction you're going when you have a negative number. All right, so any questions, let me know. I can help you guys out, but draw that little number line to help you to think about which direction you're going. Write that absolute value underneath, and it just helps you see it as 2 positives that you are adding together. And if for some reason that you have those 2 negatives that we looked at in this one right here, all right, you put the 2 absolutes underneath, and then it's a matter of jumping from one to the next, finding the difference.